Hey, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep into a really provocative text called the Matheny Chronicles. And let me tell you, it proposes an idea that might just blow your mind.
So let me ask you this. Could a sacred text, a book that has guided millions for centuries, actually be built on a mathematical blueprint? Is that even possible? Well, that's the giant question we're going to unpack today, following the breadcrumbs laid out in our source material.
Because according to the Matheny Chronicles, the answer isn't just maybe, it's a resounding yes. The authors are convinced that the Quran has this hidden, measurable numerical structure, almost like a secret code woven directly into the fabric of its chapters and verses.
All right, let's get into the heart of it. Now, the authors aren't just pointing at random numbers here and there. No, they claim to have found a single unifying formula that describes this entire intricate structure.
And there it is. Q equals 7m plus 9e plus p1729. I know, it looks completely cryptic right now, right? But think of this as the central mystery we're here to solve. We're going to break down exactly what each of these pieces means by following the clues the researchers say they've uncovered.
So let's grab our first piece of the puzzle and see how this whole thing starts to build. Our investigation kicks off with the clue that the authors say is the most prominent of all, the number 7.
Okay, so let's tackle that first part of the formula, the M. It stands for Mathani, which is an Arabic term from the Quran that the authors interpret as repetition, and the number they say is the absolute key to this concept, is 7.
The source points to the number 7 showing up all over the place. For instance, the very first chapter of the Quran has exactly 7 verses. You've got chapters 71 and 72, which both have 28 verses. And yep, that's a multiple of 7. They even find a link in chapter 7, which has 206 verses. How? Well, they use this thing called a digital root. You just add up the digits. So 2 plus 0 plus 6 is 8, which the authors then connect back to 7 by framing it as 1 plus 7.
Now you're probably thinking, hold on, the number 7 is a big deal in lots of cultures. And the authors totally get that. They address this counter-argument directly. Their response is that, yeah, while that's true, it's the specific way it's used in the Quran, the consistent context linking chapter numbers, verse counts, and themes, that they believe makes it unique.
So if 7 is all about repetition, what's next in the formula? Well, that brings us to the second major clue, the number 9. This is the one the authors connect to the idea of enumeration, or, structured counting.
All right, the next variable in our formula is E, which stands for enumeration, and this puts our spotlight on the number 9. According to the source, this number is the key to understanding the Quran's system of counting and completeness.
And this is where things get really fascinating, because the source connects our first two clues, 7 and 9, with some pretty cool math. It all centers on this number, 142857. Now that number is what you get if you divide 1 by 7. It's the repeating part of the decimal. But the really wild part is what happens when you start multiplying it.
Get this, if you multiply that number by 7, you get 999,999. And if you take that original number and split it into pairs, 14, 28, and 57, and then add those up, you get 99. In both cases, the digital root is 9. It's this deep mathematical relationship that the authors claim links the repetition of the number 7 with the counting nature of the number 9.
We've seen 7 and 9. But now we get to the most surprising, the most complex, and honestly, the most head-scratching clue in the entire formula, the number 1729. The source calls this the pola, which means pattern exemplar.
So, the obvious question is, why this number? Out of all the numbers in the universe, what is so special about 1729 that it would be the mathematical keystone for this entire theory?
Well, it's famous in the world of mathematics. It's what's known as a taxicab number, and it has this beautifully elegant and unique property. It happens to be the smallest possible number that can be expressed as the sum of two cubes in two completely different ways.
Just look at this. It's incredible. 1 cubed plus 12 cubed equals 1729. But also, 9 cubed plus 10 cubed also equals 1729. You have two totally different paths that lead to the exact same number. And it's this dual nature property that the authors say makes it the perfect exemplar for complex, interconnected patterns.
But wait, there's more. The source claims that the number's own properties are deeply connected to the Quran. Its very digits, 1, 7, 2, and 9, are said to point to key chapters. If you look at its factors, one of them is our old friend, the number 7. And even its digital root, you add them up, 1 plus 7 plus 2 plus 9 is 19. Then 1 plus 9 is 10, which reduces to 1. That allegedly matches the digital root of 28, the number of verses in those key chapters we mentioned earlier.
Okay, we've gathered our clues. 7 for repetition, 9 for enumeration, and the strange and wonderful 1729 as a pattern exemplar. So now it's time for the final act, to see how the authors claim this all comes together.
So, the big question is, how on earth do these three numbers, a prime number with huge cultural significance, a number tied to a funky decimal, and this quirky taxicab number, how do they actually connect to form one single cohesive system?
And that brings us right back to where we started, our mystery formula. But now, it's not just a random string of letters and numbers. Each part now has a proposed meaning, a specific job to do inside a much grander structure.
So here's the theory in a nutshell. Q stands for the Quran's overall coherence, its structural integrity. And that integrity, they argue, is built on 3 pillars. 7M for all the patterns of repetition, 9E for the systems of counting and enumeration, and P1729 for those super complex patterns that are anchored by that special taxicab number.
Now, having a theory is one thing, but the authors of the Mathani Chronicles wanted to see if it held up, so they turned to computers. They used a method called graph theory, which is basically just a fancy way to map out all the connections between different points to chart every single one of these proposed numerical links across all 114 chapters of the Quran.
And here is their headline finding. Their algorithm supposedly found over 5,200 of these numerical connections within the Quran. To see if that number meant anything, they compared it to a randomly generated graph of the exact same size, and that one only had about 2,000 connections. For them, that huge difference in connectivity isn't a coincidence. It points to a deliberate design.
So what do we do with all this? According to the source, we're looking at a deeply embedded mathematical structure. But what is it? Is it evidence of a divine blueprint? Could it be the incredible result of a complex oral tradition that encoded patterns to make it easier to memorize? Or is it just a series of fascinating, but ultimately coincidental numerical patterns? That is the final, massive question the Mathani Chronicles leaves us to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.